Hello, welcome to 8.9 News. I'm Ffinlo Costain. Kelp Blue farms giant kelp for use as ingredients in agriculture, pharmaceuticals and textiles. The company works in Alaska, New Zealand and Namibia. I spoke to Kelp Blue's Valentin Pitiot and I asked him to tell me more about the benefits of growing kelp.
Yeah, many benefits actually, including environmental benefits, economic or social benefits. So if we look at the environmental benefits, we can list a few of them. Blue carbon, so carbon sequestration. Kelp has this ability to sequester vast amounts of carbon forever. Another benefit is habitat provision. Where you have kelp, you usually have life. So you can see this beautiful macrocystis working as an ecosystem engineer, basically, and providing habitats for marine biodiversity. You can also name coastal erosion protection, which is basically reducing the wave energy by up to 60%, which can protect the coast from erosion. So it's quite a big one. And then we can also look at, the social benefits. We can name few like ecotourism, to attract activities on the coast, boosting the local tourism and thus the local economy. And of course, job creation, which is something that we're focusing on at Kelp Blue and supporting local economies. With hiring on coastal communities, which is really interesting.
Fantastic. Quite a miracle product then. So how's kelp being used commercially for Kelp Blue?
Yeah, so I think to answer the question, what could be quite interesting is to explain quickly how do we cultivate the seaweed. So we don't use the traditional way, which is to attach basically a rope to two buoys, then you let the seaweed grow and you harvest everything. What we have is platform floating in the water where the seaweed will grow vertically until they will reach the surface and then horizontally. And what we do is that we only harvest the part that is on the surface so that we let all the biomass to continue to do the different benefits that we discussed. And thus we can harvest this part that we will directly process in the biorefinery. So with the biorefinery, we don't have any waste and we make different products, including steam blue. We'll talk about it a bit later, I guess, but it's a natural booster for plants. And we also have kelp leather, which we can use for bag, to replace the leather from the leather industry. And we are also working on research and development to also make pharmaceutical products.
And because you're only harvesting what's on the top of the water, does that mean that the plant regenerates more rapidly than it would if you were harvesting it more aggressively right up to the ropes?
Exactly. So by only harvesting the top, basically, it's a little bit like I love your background, but it's exactly this. Is if you cut, the grass on your background, you can cut it 4 times a year and you don't need to replant it. So also you can reduce your production cost, which is really interesting. So not only having the ecosystemic benefits, but also making sure that you can get constant quality and constant supply of kelp within the year.
Is carbon sequestration currently a byproduct, or is it something that you've been able to directly monetize?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. So it's also linked to the fact that we only harvest the top, because then the seaweed that we cut will kind of die off and goes to the deep sea. And this is how the carbon is sequestered. Currently, we're not monetizing carbon credits because we're still quantifying the amount of carbon that we're sequestering through the giant kelp forest. And while carbon sequestration is kind of inherent byproduct of our operation, it's not really a primary focus or part of the business plan. It's more like a nice to have. And the concept note has been approved by Gold Standard, which is a third party. So now we're just basically ready to quantify it so that then we can get access to the credits and, of course, sell them.
When you started talking, Valentin, you listed a whole range of nature benefits that can be derived from growing kelp. On land, farmers are learning to monetize not only their carbon sequestration and storage, but also their positive biodiversity impacts. Are you looking at ways to benefit from biodiversity credits, or is that just way in the future?
Exactly. So I didn't mention it, but carbon credit is one of the credits that we could tap into, but biodiversity credit is a huge one. So far, we see more than 800 species in our kelp forest, and we only started, something like four years ago to put the seaweed in the water. And what was quite interesting about this is actually when we started to have the seaweed, we saw the kelp lices coming to the kelp forest and eating everything. So we were really scared. But then suddenly we started to see fish coming to eat the kelp lices, and then bigger fish to eat the fish, etc. And then the ecosystem is now flourishing, which is great because then indeed at some point we'll get access also to biodiversity credits.
Why have you chosen to work in the countries that you have?
So we work currently in Namibia. It's the biggest farm that we have. Also in New Zealand, we have a farm, and we're starting to install a farm in Alaska, and we're also looking for a license in Chile. The reason why we decided to focus on these countries, it's because the kelp is naturally occurring there. We don't want, to introduce a new species in the environment. And also we look at different factors. So the human factors, we need to make sure that the local economy or the local politic in place is committed to the blue economy. We also look at if the country is stable or not politically, and of course the local skills. And in Namibia, for example, we're really lucky to have UNAM and NUST that are great university to provide workforce, to help for the project. We also look at the water quality, so the nutrient content, making sure also that we have a great current bringing nutrient to the kelp. So in Namibia, for example, we have the Benguela current, which is a upwelling nutrient-dense current. And the last thing is the physical geography. So to make sure basically that we have deep sea environments where the seaweed can go, and that's where the carbon will be sequestered.
So you're working with local people in these countries, but can you give me an idea of the proportion of local employees versus international staff that have to be flown in?
Yeah, so that's part of our returns. So you were mentioning natural capital return, but we also have social return, return on inspiration, and of course, economic return. And part of the social return is actually hiring, like you were just saying, and we prioritize hiring locally. So for example, in Namibia, in our farm, we have over 90% of the Namibian team that is actually Namibian, including the managing director, who is amazing, Fabian. And yeah, we also try to hire locally as much as possible, but sometimes the skills are not necessarily available. And when it's the case, then we train people. So for example, we built a tide pool, which is a kind of pool working with the ocean, so also quite sustainable, to train people how to swim so that they can then in the future be the next generation of marine researchers and look at the biodiversity and monitor the benefit of kelp farming.
Now, overfishing is, of course, a huge challenge right up the west coast of Africa. Do you think that because you're providing alternative employment within the ocean economy, that there's actually a positive knock-on effect on fisheries in general?
Definitely. I would say two main reasons. The first one is that the kelp, they will create a shelter for the fish. So it helps reducing overfishing, for example. But in the meantime, we boost a lot the fish stock in Namibia, and as you know, it's probably one of the biggest industry in Namibia is fishery. And then we provide also fish stock for small scale fishermen, so we can also boost local economies like this. Definitely.
The regulatory environments presumably differ from country to country. So how does that work? Are you paying to rent the ocean floor in each of these territories?
Yeah, so like you just mentioned, they're all different. Country by country, but even states, like in Alaska, for example, where we have operations, and they all have different permitting requirements, processes, and also fees, of course. So it varies a lot. And yes, we pay a kind of license, so we don't really rent, it's more like a license. And to get it, we need to work with the local government to secure the permits or leases for specific ocean areas that we determine together, basically. And then what is really important is that these agreements that we have with the local governments, and we also partner with local people. So, for example, with the Maori in New Zealand or with the local tribes in Alaska, we need to make sure that we monitor our activities to have a positive impact on the communities, but also on supporting marine conservation efforts.
You mentioned earlier on that one of your products is a biostimulant for agriculture. What are the particular benefits of these biostimulants for farmers?
As an agronomist, now we're getting closer to my role, so that's perfect, this question. So our Steam Blue biostimulants offers regenerative farmers, for example, a strong return on investments by decreasing the need for synthetic fertilizer. So this is really important because it boosts the soil health and the crop productivity, and this will help basically to the farmers to shift to regenerative agriculture by, like I was mentioning, reducing fertilizer by up to 30% without sacrificing the yield, but also improving soil health, which is really important. So the microbiome, like fungi and bacteria, and the goal is to enhance the soil structure and fertility, which is a key pillar for regenerative agriculture. And one of the last points is the crop resilience. So we have some polysaccharides, which are kind of sugar in the product in Steam Blue, that will improve the farmer's plant's resilience to droughts or really stressful conditions, basically. So while Steam Blue can basically help you maximizing your return, so the ROI, it's also supporting the transition to more regenerative practices.
So where you've got soils that are particularly damaged from the overuse of petrochemicals, your biostimulant works to restore soil health more rapidly, particularly in the transition to regenerative agriculture.
Exactly. So you need to restore the soil to make sure that you can have a kind of environment that is thriving without having to add, chemical fertilizers and so on. And for this, you need to slowly restore the soil, and the biostimulant is one of these key tool in the toolbox.
What sort of crop systems benefit most from your Steam Blue biostimulant?
So what we've seen so far, because we conducted many field trials, we invest $500,000 per year in the science with accredited agencies. What we've seen so far is that it works quite well on fruits, on vegetables, and we also have interesting results on row crops. But so far, we're focusing a lot on fruits, grapes, and other, high-value crops, because we see big interest, especially in regions suffering from stresses, or with farmers that indeed want to transition to more sustainable practices.
Now, just finally, kelp can be produced very successfully in regen multi-trophic systems. Are you planning, for example, to produce mussels and other bivalves as a secondary product within your kelp farms?
Yes, to answer quickly the question, there are many successful, examples of regenerative multi-trophic systems in the kelp farming. Macrocystis, which is the type of seaweed we're focusing on, called also giant kelp, is really interesting for this because it works as an ecosystem engineer. So it, recreates life around it. And today, in our kelp farm, it's not only kelp farm. In our kelp farm, alongside of Macrocystis, we also have other seaweed type. We have mussels, we have crustaceans, even lobsters. And what we also started to do is to create, like kind of lobster hotel with the structure that we put in the water to really boost the different species. Like the crayfish hotel, basically, we name it. However, currently we don't really monetize these secondary products. We really focus on letting them flourish to support rewilding the kelp forest. But yeah, in the future, we may explore sustainable ways to develop these additional resources. But right now, our priority is rewilding the ocean and accelerating the shift to sustainable agriculture.
That was Valentin Pitiot from Kelp Blue. More news as ever on our website 8.9.com. That's all for now. We're back soon. Thanks for watching.